Ngozi Ukazu. She is just the very coolest. I am so pleased to be bringing to you tonight a conversation that I had with her about her work, her life, and check, please. The first book was published a couple years ago. Sticks and Scones was published just a few months ago. It's about a boy named Biddy who goes to college to play hockey. He's on a hockey scholarship because he was a really good figure skater in high school. A boy who loves to bake, who joins the hockey team, who falls in love with one of his teammates. It's a queer love story. I'm not a sports person, but I was there for the drama of the hockey games. I was there for the love story. I was there and the characterizations. I just love these books. They are page turners. So these books are young adult books. Our conversation is appropriate for everyone. Here we are in Ngozi Ukazu's origin story.
Origin Stories with JJK.
Jarrett J. Krosoczka.
It's a graphic memoir.
Kiddo.
Tonight's guest.
Ngozi Ukazu.
I am here with my pal, Ngozi. How are you, friend?
Hi. Oh my gosh. I was like making sure that my phone was on silent. I am doing so well. It is.
And the first book was published a few years ago in 2018, and that's actually how we met, right? And that's just something that would happen sometimes when you're traveling and you're promoting your books, your publisher's scheduling you for stuff, and it's like, hi, Jarrett, meet Ngozi, meet Jarrett. In 2 minutes, you're going to sit on that stage and you're going to be in front of 300 strangers for an hour, and you're going to talk about your books. And I remember it was the School Library Journal Day of Dialogue ahead of Book Expo.
Oh, I was trying to think of the first day we met because that wasn't the time that we got to talk the most. I think It was for YALSA, those awards. Again, that's when we really got to talk, the Morris Award.
So Check Please, the first book came out in 2018, but before we get to how Check Please came about, I want to know how Ngozi came about. Could you talk to me a little bit about your childhood or what it was like, and what kind of stories and media were you absorbing?
I am a first generation. I'm the youngest of 3 children. My parents immigrated here in the 80s. And growing up, we didn't have very much, free and reduced lunch, living in the same apartment for like over a decade. But I just remember there was always this bounty of comics and TV and music that me and my brother and sister absorbed, and we just continued to absorb. I didn't ever think that comics would be a viable profession. I just thought that entertainment was something that very, I guess, privileged people got to make. Those people who weren't like me. And in a way, it is a privilege to create comics right now, but it wasn't something I had my sights on. It wasn't something that I thought would be a viable career. And it honestly wasn't until college where I was trying to major in computer science at Yale, which is like, okay, wow. I really thought I had something going on up here. I really thought I was very smart. But I realized that was not what I wanted to do. That was not where my heart was set on. And my dean recommended that I pursue something that I was actively passionate about, which was art. And that's what I ended up doing. And after that, I went to grad school for comics. But I didn't even mention like the stuff I was reading. I was reading manga. I was watching tons and tons of anime. I was watching all of those Bruce Timm, Darwin Cook inspired DC Comics animated series. I was watching lots of sitcoms. Like I've watched like so many episodes of Frasier. Watched all of The Simpsons. Like my most of my influence is very like American and Western, with all of the anime and manga influence that came to the States in the early aughts. I remember the first manga that I picked up was Tokyo Mew Mew, which was it was basically like Sailor Moon, except the girls turned into cats. And as a 13-year-old, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to read. I want to read about girls turning into cats and then really beating the crap out of like evil dudes. I remember also in middle school, just truly diving into the world of DC Comics. I was kind of on the periphery of the Marvel world. I remember reading the Ultimate books, Ultimate Spider-Man, etc., because those were published in the early aughts. But I remember getting deep into DC Comics because I watched the Justice League show on Cartoon Network. And I remember reading this trade by Kevin Smith called Quiver. And it's a Green Arrow. It was a Green Arrow trade. And just reading that over and over and over again. So I had like a bunch of weird channels into comics. So that's my genealogy in terms of creativity.
And so what I'm astounded by, I didn't know any of that about your influences, but that all totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Having read and loved your work, but computer science through college.
That was okay. So when you're a child of an immigrant, you know how it is. Like when you're first generation, or even if you grow up, not having a lot, the viable careers that parents think you can have, that their kids can have, are like doctor, lawyer, pharmacist, engineer. And I really do love science. Those were my best grades in high school. I was getting like A's, and I really loved studying and like making notes for bio. And I liked computer science because there's this really fun programming aspect to it, this fun puzzle solving aspect to it, and you are making something out of nothing, which is a lot like comics. But I realized sophomore year of college that while my friends were, programming for fun and, reading up on the newest technological advances, I was making comics. I was drawing. I was writing stand-up sets. I was like writing humor dialogues. I really was. My brain was in a creative place. My heart was in a more creative place. And so that was really kind of where I had to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be an engineer. I wasn't going to be a doctor. I really wanted to make cartoons, and my parents, supportive as they were, like I had to like tell them that I was not going to pursue any of those very safe careers.
They sent you to Yale for computer science, and then you're like, what about instead?
What if I made cartoons, which you don't have to go to school for at all?
Yeah. And so, but when you read the intro to the first book, you talk about having taken a screenplay course, a screenwriting course in your senior year. Yeah. And towards the end of my college career, that was where I decided, okay, let me try to prepare myself to be a storyteller. Let me start to study different aspects of the craft. And I took a screenwriting course. It's like, yeah, so if someone's watching this and they are not familiar with Check Please at all, it's my first graphic novel. It's my only graphic novel that I've done so far. And it's the story, there you go, both books. It's the story of a former figure skater who joins a college hockey team and loves to bake. It's a queer romance. It's a coming of age story. It's a story about hockey. It's sports and baking. And the number one question that I get is, how did you get into the story? I am a Black woman from Houston, Texas. I'm not really your typical hockey fan. That's not what a typical hockey fan looks like. And I really fell into this story first during the screenplay writing class that I took my senior year of college, where I decided to write a screenplay about a hockey player. And in order to do that, I had to do a ton of research. I came out of that process a total hockey fanatic because I'd learned so much. I've always loved sports, but by the end of this, I was just totally fascinated with the world of hockey. And when I started grad school the very next year, grad school for comics, which, yes, you can go to grad school for comic book making, I wanted to practice, and I ended up making my webcomic Check Please, which is just, it was a direct inspiration from the screenplay. That course
kind of instilled in me, Inception style, this idea that storytelling is it's like a very internal process. The story itself is a life form that exists outside of you, the author. It instilled in me a lot of like, I'm not the most like mystical spiritual person, but when I talk about character and story, I can go to that place of like, what does the story want? What does the character need? Like they're active agents instead of just things that I'm creating. So yeah.
And so that script that you wrote senior year, and then you went to grad school for where did you go to grad school for comics?
I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia, where
did Yale not have a comics?
You know what? It's so weird. Yale didn't have like a cartooning class. It's so strange how.
Well, if they did, it would be like all New Yorker single panels, right?
It would be all New Yorker single panel abstract art, like take a Joseph Albers painting and make it into sequential art. No offense to Yale school art. It's not about drawing manga or superheroes.
I don't know. So you started this as a webcomic then. And so was that webcomic, was it all of these characters?
Yeah, what you have there on your desk is the webcomic that I started. I never had any intent to get this comic into print. It was just supposed to be practice, actually. I was like, I'll do 2 or 3 chapters, maybe 4 or 5 to practice. And that will help me in the summer in between college and grad school. And if you see me looking to the side, it's because my cat is threatening to unplug my webcam. So I'm just scratching its ears, trying to keep it happy. Please don't destroy everything. But I kept working on the comic. During grad school, and eventually it gained a following, and I did a Kickstarter to self-publish the book. And it was around the time where I self-published. That's when First Second imprint of Macmillan, they noticed this book, and they were like, "Hey, we see that you're self-publishing. How would you like to see this book in bookstores?" So that's kind of the path from me just doing this as practice. And then, oh my gosh, my worst dream is that the cat is suddenly awake. I'm going to
No, you know what? If you hear footsteps, it's my 4-year-old running right above. I'm in my basement. And so, never mind your cat, you're about to see a 4-year-old boy in just Captain underwear.
Well, I hope your 4-year-old doesn't randomly, he never bites. I don't know why he's acting crazy. Put him away. I think he wanted to leave. I think he really wanted to use the bathroom or something.
Yeah, or your cat's like, I've heard all these stories.
Yeah, he's like, oh, this is so
I'm not again. Yeah, it was a webcomic and Macmillan did that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he can practically do the interviews for me now. Sometimes I just set him up and then I go take 5.
That adds extra layer because I love that the framing of the story is the main character Biddy has he has this vlog, right, where it breaks up, and I love a great detail is background changes as he's aging up in college. And so it should also important to know, now I always knew this was young adult, right? But before I read it, my daughter is 11 and a half now, and so when she was, I guess, nearly 10, she'd read Hey Kiddo, which obviously has a lot of curse words. And I was like, well, here's this great new book. We met you, we brought it back. Now, 2 of her best friends are hockey players. And I was like, this is great. We got books signed to them. And then I was like, oh, now it's my turn to read. And I was like, what? Hi, Mateo's parents. Just let you know.
There's a lot of swearing. It's college. It's hockey players.
It's college hockey players. And
frat boys.
You must have had to go on through some kind of scientific observational journey. Were you just sitting in the corner quietly with journals, hockey? Did you follow a hockey team?
Yeah, I would go to frat parties and sit in the corner and just record everything. Usually there was some foliage that I would hide behind. I had a camera that was motion censored. Uh, no, I was
your glasses would have a little camera.
yeah, it was very good. I would cover myself with like a jersey that would smell like a hockey player, so they wouldn't even look for me. They would walk right past me. And I mean, I like sports as well, and so it's not like, like I've never interacted with sporting people. I was on the basketball team for like a semester in high school, and I would have been on longer if it weren't for that pesky chemistry grade that I'd fallen to a B. So you gotta keep working hard. It was like a C. Like, who am I joking? It was bad. But when I was playing basketball, I loved playing it, and I think I'm still pretty athletic. But I probably should have realized that I wasn't going to be like some Division I superstar, because I would also watch basketball documentaries and just read a lot of sports journalism. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. This is helping me with sports. No. I just
how do you write the story? Because even as someone who, doesn't really, like, I don't follow, like, for me, sports is like, I'd like to go to Fenway to go see the Red Sox play live, but other than that, I don't have much interest. But you had me, like, this is such a page turner for the story of the sport. And so hearing you talk about how much you did like sports and participated in sports, but then all of the other, like, like the superhero stories you absorbed, it definitely feels like, like a Justice League of jocks, for a lack of a better expression. But then also knowing how much you love those sitcoms.
Yeah,
I felt that. Like I felt, and I was there for the character development. I was there for the blossoming romance. And I can tell you, I was there for the body language. You are an expert at the body language and how the characters are just moving through the scenes.
Oh, thank you. I think a lot of that comes from having done some acting in college too. Just, you really want to act out what your characters are doing so that you have another layer of physical dialogue that readers can read. It adds to everything. It's so fascinating. In American comics, there's not a lot of sports stories. Where in
like the cartoonist and the athlete, like that Venn diagram is like that.
And the only sports stories that we get are like super weirdo, like American style superhero comics that are like, JJ Watt is a superhero. And it's just like, no, I'd rather just watch JJ Watt do very well on the Texans instead of reading a comic about him. That doesn't make any sense to me. But the reason why I find sports so interesting as just something to consume, it's all about the human drama. It's just metaphor. It's just like, everything that you see played out in an arena, on the pitch, on the court, it's just a metaphor for it's just externalizing the internal. That's all it is. I'm very passionate about it. And so
it's like a Greek myth.
Yeah, no, it's just, and one of the best questions that I ever got on a panel was, someone was like, well, they weren't being snarky, but they were like, well, they were being very, very genuine, but they were just like, if all those sports games, you either win or lose them, how do you make that interesting? And I was just like, don't you know? Don't you understand that it's not just about the winning or losing? It's about the stakes. It's always about the stakes that you set up before the game. And a loss or a win is just, it's almost like testing a hypothesis. So if Biddy is having this huge internal conflict about coming out to his father and his father not supporting him, and his father is in the stands at the game, all of that external stuff, all of that internal conflict plays out. So if he loses that game, what does it mean about his relationship with his father? If he wins that game, is there a resolution between him and his father? It's just adding context to a win or loss. So it's never just like, oh, they got enough points.
Right. You can just watch ESPN for that.
And I don't know. And for me, I guess that's very obvious, because when I'm watching a game, I'm like, if LeBron wins this championship, then his entire journey that was forced upon him when he was 18 years old becomes more legitimate. This is not just about one game; it's about the legacy. But then that's me being really crazy about sports. And I hope this is a conversation, because I can ask you literally just as many questions as you've asked me.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm very interested in your relationship with sports and what you think about men and toxic masculinity. I'm just kidding.
I was terrified. I was terrified of sports. I was a not natural athlete. My grandfather, who raised me, he was a sports star in high school. He had photo journals of him playing basketball in the 1940s, the newspaper writing articles about him. But he never forced it on me. The people that raised me never really pushed it on me. I think it was clear that it wasn't my thing. I love to draw. And when I got to high school, I was petrified because I had an older sister who would say to me growing up, "Hey, if you don't stop playing sports now, by the time you get to high school, you're going to be a wicked dork." And which was like so much pressure, and it just wasn't me, trying to put like a square peg into a round hole, and when I got to high school, I was to take art class. I was in the same gym class as all the upperclassmen.
Oh gosh.
And they bullied the hell out of me. Forever that painted my picture of athletes and jocks, right? And then, now that I'm an adult, I look back and those few upperclassmen, they were jerks. When I was working on Hey Kiddo and I was working on that scene, I was like, I don't want to be unfair to this other person somewhere. I'm not naming them. It doesn't look like them. And so I looked them up on Facebook and I'm like, God, they still look like total jerks. So I'm just going to write the scene as it happened. But some people who I would think of, oh, I'm not cool enough to sit at your lunch table, you must be a real jerk, And I'm like, oh, they were just kids like me who were struggling with life, who had stuff at home, were trying to find themselves. And I had art, they had sports, right? So
yeah. Sports for many people is a safe space. And it's interesting because it can be both a safe space and a toxic space, but there is still some protection there of being on a team and having belonging. So I've always, now more than ever, I start to ask people did you play sports? Why or why not? What was your attitude growing up? Oh, but one thing that I wanted to ask you, which I almost want to ask every single person making comics today, is if someone came up to you and was like, I want to do what you do, what path would you prescribe to them? What would you tell them to do?
I mean, sort of similar to what we've been talking about, learn how to write a screenplay.
Okay.
Take acting classes, but you also have to just have a really thick skin, and almost more important than your ability to write and illustrate is your ability to hustle and work hard and know that no one's going to come finding you. You have to put your stuff out there in some way. And what do you tell people?
Oh boy. The longer that I am separated from when I started my webcomic to now, my advice has started to shift. One thing I do tell people is that they don't always need to go to art school, which is extremely expensive. I often tell people community college is fine or state school is fine. It's more than fine. You save money and you can still study art really well and then have a backup thing instead of an art degree. And I think kind of in the same line as hustling is there has to be this ability to finish a project. There has to be this ability to execute. So if you aren't able to self-promote yourself, some people are very shy, they don't know how to just sell themselves, you have to be able to show an employer that you can finish a project. If you're not the type of person to self-promote. So I always recommend that people finish a small zine, finish a small book, finish something and then work on that, because the path to, being a published author is, a series of completion, you have to complete steps. And when I mean that, you have to finish a chapter, you have to finish thumbnails. So you have to be able to understand that kind of grueling feeling of knowing that you have to complete something and it's not perfect. So that's usually what I tell people.
And what that also shows is that you have the ability to draw the character over and over again and have it look like the same person.
Yeah. Like literally just consistency. Just even consistency. And on top of that, like knowing that some of this is drudgery. I call it a meaningful toil, like that it's not always like you're not always drawing Godzilla fighting a million like jet planes. You're not always drawing that one amazing kiss. Sometimes you're just going to be drawing the same shoe over and over and over.
It was so nice to chat with you and catch up. Are we going to get another check, please? Is that what you're working on?
No more check, please. No, check, please is done. I have a new graphic novel that I'm working on right now. I'm almost done thumbnailing. Yeah, it's going to be about a Nigerian girl who goes to a private boarding school and has a crush on a rich white boy, and they switch bodies, and it's about race and socioeconomics.
Wow.
And gender. Oh, is it about gender?
Oh, it sounds amazing. When can we pick that up?
Probably in 2022. So
that's pretty quick in the world of graphic novels.
Yeah.
It'll be worth
Hopefully I'll finish this year.
Ngozi, well, it was so great to chat with you. I look forward to seeing you again in real life.
IRL. Okay, thank you so much. This was lovely. You're fantastic at hosting.
Hashtag alone together.
Soon. Sooner than we think.